I mean, the worst part about being in the corner is I can't lay like this because I end up looking like Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park, and I can't really sit like this because it looks like I'm giving you a lecture or something. I'll fucking go with it. Hello, my name is Almat Jazz, and I have tasked myself to make a visual novel by myself. Today's going to be a bit of a different episode. This is almost like a 12.5 because it's not directly related to the game, but almost me applying for funding, not getting it, and how that's a good thing. Let me show you what I mean. So, what is a funding call and why are they good? A funding call, as the title suggests, is a call for funding. This can be for various projects ranging from games, animations, any type of creative outlet, and it even goes beyond that into the sciences, so on and so forth. And in the game dev space, the more famous ones would be the Epic Games Fund, where developers from all over the world can basically pitch their games in order to help fund them. Now these range in size from millions of pounds being spent to the more smaller funding calls. And it was one of these smaller funding calls that I applied to. Now this funding call was relatively local to me. I live in Northern Ireland, and this funding call was to help develop and fund the growing game dev space that we currently have here. And as I went down the application process, they were looking for three main things: a pitch deck, a price breakdown, and a timeline of development. Now for those of you who don't know, I'm making a visual novel type game about cats eating ramen at a night stall. The game is very story and character driven, relying on the visuals and the storytelling as opposed to the gameplay. So let's go through each part of the application to basically show you what I did. Starting with the pitch deck, I basically broke this down into several sections. Part 1 here was basically explaining the overview of the game, explaining what type of game it's going to be, what type of category the game falls under, and how the player will interact with the game itself. I also created this image here. This is basically based off of the main menu image that I created previously, but I fleshed it out a bit more by adding some elements over at the Noodle Nook itself. This also showcased the logo as well. Scrolling down, there was a little bit about myself, about who I am as a person, my previous experiences, and why I want to pursue game development. In other words, why I'm basically applying for the funding call. Scrolling down further, I basically explained the game engine that I'm using. In this case, it's Visual Novel Maker, which is my game engine of choice, and give a small insight into the game making process. Other examples would be things like Unity and Unreal Engine, Godot, so on and so forth, but it is nice to mention what game engine you're using, I think. Scrolling down, we have where the game currently is, along with an early alpha screenshot of the game itself and its current form. In this section, I also mentioned things that are done that you don't see in this image, things like the script for the story, character animations, and things being tested and refined. I felt like this was important to add because I want to make sure that they know where the game currently stands, so they can use this as a starting point to know where it's going to end up in the future. And then the final thing at the bottom is the need for funding. Now this funding call was for £15,000, or just over $19,500 for our American friends, and what that money would help me be able to do, what that money would help me accomplish, and what the funding would help go towards, things like marketing, licensing fees, so on and so forth. I also showed additional characters that you didn't see previously to expand upon where the game currently is as well. And right at the end, there was a thank you for viewing the pitch document, as well as a few various links to my personal website and my YouTube channel. Now that was the pitch deck, and now the next thing is the timeline for development. I basically split this up into a 12-month process, and I split this up into 4 different sections: the pre-production, the production, the marketing, and then the launch. This was based off my personal experience creating a short animation that I had done previously. So you had the pre-production phase where you're basically designing the characters, finishing the assets, purchasing licenses for things like trademarks, musics, fonts, and various prototyping phases. This would be in the first few months. The next few months would be the production itself, putting all these assets together into the final game. This will be using Visual Novel Maker, as mentioned previously. Once it's all together, it's also mentioned that this will be the polishing phase, making sure that all the sharp edges and everything that's jutting out are nicely filed and sanded down, so it's a solid game to play. The third part was very short. This would be the marketing phase. This would be things creating like the press kit, the website for the game itself potentially, finding people to play the game in order to promote it, and creating long and short form contents from trailers and adverts to go on various social medias. And then finally we have the launch. Now various things can be ordered differently, but this would be things like creating the Steam page, finalizing the assets for this like the screenshots and the trailer for it, and then actually, launching the game. This could even include the demo build, because I know this game is quite niche. To be able to play something small could even help players be able to make a decision of whether they want to buy the game or not, but that's something to consider further down the line. And then finally we have the price breakdown. Now, how do you know what to include in your price breakdown? Well, have a little tip. have a look at other people's Kickstarters that they've done previously. I went to Thomas Brush's, he'd made games like Pinstripe and Once Upon a Coma, and I took this as a guide to be able to break down my own personal funding in order to create my own pie chart. And also, the more things that you add to this pie chart, the more it looks like that you have thought about all the possible things that the funding can go towards. Things like the game development itself, the marketing and advertising campaigns. In my case, I have partial voice acting that could potentially be in the game, or the legal and Steam fees that are there, and also hidden fees like taxes and an emergency fund in case things creep up on you and you have to pay them, for instance. This is all neatly explained in a nice pie chart and a table underneath, so you can clearly see where the money is going to go towards. And then right at the bottom in brackets, I say that these are estimates, as prices of things can wiggle and move, so these are things just to keep an eye on. And that's basically it. They're the 3 main things that I created for the application process. Now, the question is, did I get the funding? Short answer, no. And the long answer is no, but during the time making the application, I actually learned a lot of things and created a lot of assets to go alongside the game itself. Things like the price breakdown I could easily use as her Kickstarter campaign, as well as the timeline for development to be able to show how long the game is going to take to develop. Things like this that I'd actually never thought about before until this point. As up until now, I've basically been working on the game part-time without realising where the end goal would be. I also took stock on the overall aesthetics of the game as well. Things like these borders that you saw that were very Orient themed. I originally thought were a nice idea, but when it's all together, it's very stereotypical, so I'm going to try and stay away from that kind of stuff going forward. And I have done with the recent update to the UI design. During this point as well, it was nice to be able to take stock of where the game project currently is as well, and what I want to aim for going forward. So all in all, pretty good experience, I'm not going to lie. And that's pretty much it. In the next episode, we are actually going to be working on the game, polishing it up and working more towards an actual finished product. So, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.